committee to order. First thing we need is approval of the prior committee meeting minutes.
Motion.
Supervisor Frazier, second by Supervisor Wood. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. We can go ahead and start with, doesn't matter where we start today.
You want to start with,
Yeah,
we
will.
gotta have a
Yeah.
short, we need to have an executive. You wanna?
Yeah, we'll start with a brief executive session to talk about litigation involving property dispute.
Okay, do we have a motion? Supervisor Sokol, seconded by Supervisor Conover. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. That pizza got a little twisted there. My neighbors. For lunch? Dennis.
Order low.
Okay.
Okay, we'll continue on with the Public Works DPW portion, which is a thicker agenda here. The first item is on page 1. This is a grant for a county bridge asbestos abatement and painting project. This is to establish a new federal grant.
I move 1 and 7.
Okay, do we have a second? Yep. We have Supervisor Wood, second by Supervisor Sokol on 1 and 7. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And on page 8 is a contract related to that same grant and increase the capital project. This is for engineering services. This is for the abatement design and painting spec development for that project.
Somebody like to move that? Supervisor Frazier, second. Thank you. Supervisor Wood. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Starting on page 15 is a series of transfer of fund requests. These are related to salaries as we're budgeting, or as we're balancing budget on snow removal salaries versus maintenance of road salaries. And also on pages 16, 17, 18 are the pages where we account for county salaries and equipment rentals for various projects.
Moved by Supervisor Sokol, second by Supervisor McDonald. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
On page 19 is a authorization to attend a meeting or convention. This is for the winter conference in Albany that Kevin Hejos and I attend. This is one where we take commute down.
Supervisor Wood, second by Supervisor Conover. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, under the referral and pending items, we actually are close on receiving the New York State DEC grant. There's just a follow-up we have to do with the grant portal. So that should be coming in any day now to resolve that. And then I want to let the committee know that there's likely going to be additional transfer requests between now and the board meeting as we shuffle money within budget. I don't think we're going to have any shortfalls overall, but I may have to move monies between various codes to make all the balances books balanced by the end of the year. I do have some photos to pass around under our items of interest. We did some paving for the town of Thurman on their salt shed. I'm going to pass you some Bay Road and Luzerne paving, as well as County 11, Riverbank Road, and then also some photos of the finished Market Street Bridge with the guide rail and everything else. I wanted to give the committee an update on our Reduce the Use Salt initiative. Started discussions with Chris Nowitzki, the Lake George waterkeeper, regarding installation of monitoring equipment on county trucks. This is part of an initiative. There's 7 other municipalities in the Lake George Basin that have already initiated some portion of this process. Right now we're working from the technical standpoint on how these systems will integrate with our existing ground speed controllers. And so we're in communication with the vendor that has been hired to handle those. We have 4 trucks that operate, at least a portion of their routes within the Lake George, basin, so our intent is to get all of those trucks installed and become part of that initiative. I want to let the committee know too that last week, myself and Tracy Eldridge he is the Superintendent of Public Works for Hamilton County. He's the president of our County Highway Superintendents Association, and he and I met with some their transportation advisors within the governor's cabinet, and we met with them down at the Capitol last week to discuss next year's budget process, and met with a few of those members, and they were very intently listening to what we had to say about local infrastructure and some of our funding sources, to include TIPS and Paving New York, and also the Bridge New York program. And one of the things that came out of the meeting that I want to pass on to you was I'd asked the governor's representatives there about the Paving New York money, and there was a question from Town of Thurman as to whether that would roll over. Our initial feedback we got from the regional office was that they thought it would, and I brought that up, and they confirmed that yes, it will be treated the same as CHIPS monies as far as rolling over. CHIPS monies, as you know, always has that caveat, subject to appropriation, but I guess everything is subject to appropriation is what they told us, and they certainly have no intent in taking any of that money back, because I know some towns, and even the county, when we waited until end of July for that guidance to come out officially on how we could use that money. Some towns are having a tough time spending the money, but it's okay to roll over into next year. The last attachment I have is the DPW overtime report, and subject to any questions, we can move on to either solid waste or Parks and Rec.
Gonna go to Parks and Rec.
Okay. I did talk with Justin Gagno of Saratoga North Creek this morning. He asked if I needed him here, and I said if you have something important to report. He did give me an update that they had sold 15,000 tickets to the Polar Express already, and they have 5 weeks to go. They just started this past Friday. They've already sold 15,000 tickets. Their goal this season is 28,000 tickets, so they're very happy about that initial surge of ticket sales. And other than that, he just said he was very busy with that, so he asked if he absolutely had to come, and I told him no. On page 1 of the agenda is the request authorizing agreements between the counties and the towns. This is for our snowmobile support and trail maintenance agreements. These are annual agreements that we renew each year.
Moved by Supervisor Wood, seconded by Supervisor Conover. Any discussion?
I have a question. We didn't use the trails last year, so what do they do with the money they got last year? Just work on them?
I wondered about that too.
Ours did some trail maintenance. I think they put in a couple more bridges and did some trail expansion. I don't know if that used all the money, but I know they were out this summer working on that.
Same thing, they have to take money on the loans on the companies and bank buying them, so.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
The next item on page 2 is the authorization to enter into the intermunicipal agreement with the town of Bolton to accept funding with the town of Bolton's. This is from their occupancy tax. Or no, this is straight Bolton funds. half OC tax and half Bolton funds.
Moved by Supervisor Sokol, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
And page 3 is a map of the fairgrounds, and I wanted to make the committee aware of a recent discussion we started. You may recall Dean Moore. He's a prior county employee up on the farm and now works for Soil and Water. But Dean is involved with a soccer league called Northern United, and from talking with Dean, they're always looking for new space for practice and for to hold games. He sent us this map and asked if there was any feasibility to using portions of the fairgrounds, to accommodate that. We've just started that conversation with Dean. We think there are some areas that could potentially be used with authorization of the county that would have almost no impact, on the existing fairground, use. Certainly the portions of the fields on the opposite side of the road in front of Countryside, may be feasible. So I wanted to make you aware in case you heard anything about it, and we'll be working with the county attorney's office to see if there's any legal, constraints that we need to be aware of. And then we'll come back to committee with something on it if we think it's operationally feasible for you to consider.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Jeff, I just want to say, I think it's important that we get to wherever we're going to go in terms of what our plan and policy is relative to the fairground. We have people that are waiting, but at the same time, we have a lot of questions on our end in terms of especially long-term arrangements and how much we charge and so on and so forth. So I would hope that we could, and there's legal questions as well in terms of some of these long-term arrangements and what we can and can't do. So I would hope we could get them resolved here as soon as possible.
The next item actually is a follow-up to our discussion last month. There we go. So this was relative to that request and the discussion in committee last month about what our fees should be going forward. So on page 6 is a summary of our annual expenses and our annual revenue. So you'll see on the top portion of that list on page 6 are the various family parties or the major events there, including the Warrensburg Bike Rally, the world's largest garage sale, and Cornell Cooperative's use of it for 4-H Youth Fair and Fall Festival. We do have prior resolutions exempting Cornell Cooperative, and so that's why there's no fees related to those. The other rates, I think I said in committee that our rate was $175 a day, but it's actually $150 a day, and that's set by resolution that we included on page 9. And then you'll see on the second portion of that chart are the expenses totaling approximately $9,800. There are backflow tests and water quality tests that are required by the Department of Health, and also just an estimate of our annual grounds maintenance and electricity costs, as well as water taxes. We have on page 7. Page 7 is a breakdown of our electric costs. The reason I wanted to include this was so you had an idea of what our, how the various events impact, our costs. So that's where we're at. I mean, obviously it is more expensive to maintain the fairgrounds than what revenue we're getting. As I mentioned, I think last month, the fee used to be $300 a day, but the fairground was rarely used then, and we do have certainly the Warrensburg Bike Rally is a relatively new event since that fee had been reduced.
I think my questions and concerns were more, I think the fee structure is important, but I think where I was coming from was, how do we make a decision? Is it first come, first served? Is it first come, first served for that year? What about multi-year arrangements? How do we make that decision? Again, is it just we deal with it when it's advanced to us? What about like 5- and 10-year arrangements? How do we feel about it? What does the law require in terms of that type of contract? Those are the kind of questions.
Maybe limited to 3 years, aren't we?
I'm not sure.
I had a person actually come to me and say they would like to rent the fairgrounds for $175. I mean, it's, there's, whatever we do, we've got to be consistent, and,
Well, they have an application fee that they make out at Parks and Rec, right?
Yes.
They take their request to Parks and Rec,
We
and
take
then
that.
it comes to committee.
Right. Well, the individual requests don't go through committee, that authority's been delegated to me, so I signed those. I did talk to, Brian about the feasibility of doing a longer term one, so, what we do is a license agreement, we don't provide any other thing than that. The license agreement allows it to be canceled, you know, in the event of something bad happening, we retain that authority to cancel a license agreement at any time. And so, Brian was comfortable either way. He thought maybe an approach that would be a 5-year, with an option to 5-year renew would give us at least a hard, you know, review time for that, after 5 years. But because it's a license agreement, it's not an easement, it's not a contract per se, it's a very limited, use, and we retain all authority to be able to cancel it. He was comfortable with something longer term.
See, that's totally, I mean, I'm not being argumentative, I'm just putting it out there. It's one thing for me to want to rent Fairgrounds this year on August, whatever, for $175 or $150. It's quite another thing for me to want to license the place on the 4th of July for the next 10 years for $175. I mean, it just seems to me that that's...
It's an escalating thing.
Well,
They're
I'm
gonna
not
be there
saying we
for
don't do it, I'm just saying that I think that some thought has to be given to this, to make sure that we're not, you know, entering into a situation we're gonna regret down the road.
Right.
But I think that Brian's on, I think he's got the right terminology there when we start talking about a license, is that multi-year thing. I think you're talking more of a licensing situation, and I think that, as they say, at least from my way of thinking, that's a horse of a different color. I don't know, it's kind of my pass on it right now.
Yeah, I think Zibro wanted a commitment, cause he wants to expand his events there. You know, he'd like a little bit more than, I don't know what he was in for. Was he in for a couple, 3 years? I think he wanted to go a little bit longer term. The other one is, I think, for the world's largest garage sale, for them to use it, I think they need to lock it in for a few years out. So, I mean, because it is important in the chamber. You know, it gets used for parking, and then they bust people down from there, and I think it was pretty full this year. So I think but I think Mr. Zibro was looking for a firmer, a little bit longer commitment. 5 years would probably be fine with him, with a thing to renew at and I would put an escalator clause in there, because, you know, if it was me, I'd just put it so it goes up a little bit different than the sewer contract with the Queensbury and City Glens Falls.
I like that approach.
Just trying to sneak that in
Yes.
anytime you can.
I like that approach a lot better.
Helping Gene out.
Yeah.
I like that
I'm at a
approach.
lost cause, believe me.
And then I think, you know, it's simply a question of, I think Chairman's right, and I think it's a question of,
Why don't we have Brian work on something?
yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Just so, when we put the, electrical use in there on page 7, you'll see, the reason I wanted that broken up out by month was you'll see the month of June when that event is.
Yeah.
They are a big user, so, I mean, right there's probably $350 just in electrical costs.
Yeah, and he's gotta be willing to pay that.
Right, and,
Okay, yes.
But I like the idea, it's a longer term arrangement, but not out of sight.
Yeah.
It may be a little bit more on the fee side because our expenses are more, and then we can revisit this on down the road somewhere. I like that approach.
I'll work with Brian on that, see if we can't get something formulated up. And you don't pay us tax, that's fees. It's not a tax, it's for water. Like, make sure that's right. End up in the post-star for taxes. We don't charge them.
That's all I had for Parks and Recs.
Okay, you wanna move into, solid waste?
Yes. So on the one-page agenda, the one big item to talk about is the the electrical recycling bid, and,
She's here.
Julie's here, good, so I don't have to speak for her. I'll turn it over to Julie.
Okay, on the electronic recycling, mostly, you know, we had to rebid that because the current vendor could not extend based on, the current terms, because they were getting a lot of, broken CRTs, which is a different recycling method. So, we added a price for that, we added fluorescent light bulbs, because we have a lot of those here at the county at the jail, and I know some towns collect those too. So we're not opening that one until tomorrow. That was the soonest I could open it after finding out that we needed to rebid. So I think Jeff has requested to award to the most responsible bidder. I don't see that as a problem. I don't think they're gonna throw me any curveballs tomorrow, but I can certainly bring it back to committee if I have to.
Okay. Have a motion from Supervisor Wood, second Supervisor Conover. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And the only other things I wanted to report on, were the solid waste disposal and transportation extensions. I've gotten most of the extensions in for the disposal services. In an effort to try to save as much money as we possibly can for you guys, I did ask the vendors if they would hold their pricing from year one as opposed to raising it, as they did for year two. Only Wheelabrator agreed to that, so, basically the towns of Bolton, Chester, Queensbury, and Thurman will be benefiting from that arrangement. They're not raising their price for next year. The rest of them did not agree to it. And, sorry. I tried for everybody. Casella indicated that they could not extend for their bulk metal recycling, which basically affects everybody. I did get a report from them, and only a few, towns are actually having them recycle the bulk metal. So I didn't know if that was something you wanted me to rebid or make your own arrangements.
Supervisor Conover?
Can they take advantage of the waste management, bid? Are they allowed to, if the other bidder, no?
No, I have to rebid it, which I'm fine with doing. But because, let's see. I'm sorry, Bolton, Chester, Horton, and Queensbury were the ones that were gonna, benefit from the extension for Wheelabrator. Bolton, Chester, Queensbury, and Thurman were the only ones that utilized the bulk metal. So, out of all of the, municipalities that we had on there, I didn't know if you just didn't need pickups during that term, or if you had other arrangements.
We had nothing but trouble with them trying to get them to come and pick up. Julie knows because I've gotten a hold of her. It's a chronic problem. We're content not to rebid it. We're gonna go back and use Kelman. We didn't have a transport fee with them. We got the check in 2 days, so our board's decided that we're just gonna go back to Kelman.
Is that because the price of metal has declined? Is that the idea?
They changed the formula, and
Yeah.
he said something about it going from 75% down to 25%, so they just didn't honor the arrangement for any longer of a term than the initial 1 year.
But waste management is prepared to extend it.
Waste management did not get that portion of the contract.
Well, they did
They're-
through, but,
They are only doing, plastics. I don't have much to do with plastics and
Cardboard.
maybe.
They do cardboard, papers.
But it was not bulk metal. Casella was the one that got bulk metal.
We don't
for
use
almost
them.
everybody.
We go down our own and work, and
What about bulk metal itself? What's gonna happen on price?
I would have to rebid, if it was the consensus of the committee that that's how you wanted to proceed. Otherwise, we just won't extend for that portion of it. They already sent me back the, letter saying that they cannot extend. So I either do nothing, or I rebid for the towns that are interested.
pleasure of the committee.
Let them do their own thing.
Go ahead, Craig.
So what's the option then, if?
The town could, obtain quotes and have their own contract, yeah.
I can give you a name, Craig, after the meeting.
yeah.
Okay, so that's consensus of the committee, just let the towns move forward? Okay.
That's such a fast changing now.
Okay, and then, on the transportation services, both vendors are rebidding, or are extending, so we will not be rebidding that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay. Anything further, Jeff?
No.
Anything further from the committee? Motion to adjourn? We're adjourned.
Good.